Hello. Let me shut these. Can you? Oh my God, you can see me better. That's a lot better. Apparently, there's heaven outside right now. Hello, my lovely little Jack Irons, and welcome to yet another live stream where today will you be listening to chapters 5 and 6 of the Sirens Call Act 2, the 5 Letters of Mark audiobook. Awesome. So we'll get into it in just a minute. There doesn't need to be a whole long introduction or whatever. So I probably will try to be posting these most of the time every day, depending on my schedule. I may post one tomorrow. I probably could post one tomorrow, but yeah, I probably will post for chapter 7 tomorrow. But then after chapter 7, it may be difficult to post every day. Like I may have, since Christmas is like in 2 days, I would be spending time with my family. So it may be hard for me to just, I don't know, do a stream. So there may be a gap like a couple of days before a stream happens, but I will still be trying to upload. My horror folktale thing is going to be coming probably in a couple of weeks. Very excited about that. That will be up on the channel decently soon, as well as a few more Christmas videos for the holidays before the season is over. All right. So we are on chapter. We're on chapter 5, May 1680, en route to Denmark. So things are cranking up a notch in the story, lads. Things are getting a little. There's no more delicious, delectable dinners. There's about to be a huge sea storm and a very dangerous coral reef. But yeah, the story is kicking up a notch. I'm not really going to do much explaining to the point on, because you can just listen to the story and figure it out for yourself. But and I do say it in the, you can just read the description of the stream as well. But yeah, so still in 1680. One sec, sorry. Starting in 1 second. Okay, we're on page 118, guys. So yeah, they're about to encounter a coral reef and a storm, so that's going to be pretty crazy. Yeah, so I'm glad you guys are enjoying the stream so far. I'm really enjoying listening to this live. It's really fun. It's a good time. So yes, it will take us a while to go through the entire audiobook, but we can do it, lads. We can do it. All right, so we're on chapter 5, May 1680, en route to Denmark. So let's get into it, guys. Turn up the volume. All right. So again, voice acting gets better, I promise.
I climbed to the rigging halfway up the crow's nest, aiding a man up there. On the golden bow as she crashed into the sunny ocean waves. Ropes were thick and long, stretching down from the top of the nest like a web and strewn out going in different directions, either hitting a port pole or tied down to the sides of the ship. The man who was up in the crow's nest was gripping a big spyglass, and he was viewing the ocean for any ships, but coming up with nothing. We hadn't seen a lot of ships except for a few smaller vessels, mostly fishermen and traders and merchants, riding along the coast. I was enjoying my time on the golden bow, and enjoying the French captain's company at that, and I sharply loved being around his crewmen, in which they are verily a happy people. Life on the sea is a hard life, and a difficult one indeed. You constantly have to be looking for enemy ships, wary of sea storms and creatures from the deep, mutiny, starvation, and diseases. It was a constant struggle, and most folk don't understand why us sailors enjoy the sea so much. But it's the lull of the ocean waves, the cooing of a seagull, the creatures that slither under the deep blue, the adventure, the adrenaline, the exploration. There's no other feeling like it in the world, and I know my heart longs for the sea. I started to become familiar with the ship now, almost knowing where everything was located on such a frigate. I focused my attention back to the nest. The man above me, his name being Jean-Noel Berger, closed the spyglass and shouted downward towards me as I hung onto the ropes attached to the mast. "What is the heading, lad?" I shouted up to the man. Jean-Noel smiled with thin lips, aiming his head to me, his long blonde hair rushing down to his chest. He moved it aside. The heading is B-54 198, eastward south latitude. We are bracing the wind and the heading looks clear and fine. He called over the howling wind. I grinned happily as I, still holding onto the tackle ropes in the mast beam, about 100 feet high above, I aimed my attention to the bottom of the deck to where Daniel and Tim waited for my call. I cupped my hands around my mouth. 54 and 198 latitude east. Daniel stretched out a thumbs up. He spun around and screamed it up to Marquis at the wheel, who heard it and scribbled on the charts. He veered the big boat east slowly as the big gale smashed into the waters, crashing the white ruffle up over the rims of the boat. As the boat rocked and swayed sideways, pushing eastward towards the blaring golden sun, the boat began to scrape. I began to lose my balance on the tackle. As the boat scraped, the underhull riveting and scratching and banging about, I watched the crew scream, trying to hold on the ship. Marquis struggled with his skinny arms to hold the wheel tightly, keeping from spinning, screamed for Daniel. Daniel darted up the stairs and gripped the wheel with the Frenchman, keeping it from spinning about and round. I heard faint screams from so high up and lost my balance from the rope. My hand slipped and I did a backflip, falling down 100 feet. Shit! I yelled over the wind. I quickly reached inside my breeches and pulled out a silver dagger. I slung it forward at the web of rope. My vision was a collection of swirly shipwood. As I did 2 more backflips, making my vomit travel down through the air and stabbed the dagger into the side of the mainmast. The knife split into the wood and stopped me abruptly. I slung back forward, facing normally, hanging with one hand on the dagger jabbed into the mainmast. My heart raced as I realized I fell 20 feet, and the dagger nearly ripped my arm out of its socket from the stop of the knife. My arm throbbed as I held my body weight up so I wouldn't fall to my death. I peered up to see Jean was still safe in the crow's nest, holding on for dear life as the boat still scraped. I could hear the wood creaking and crying under the waves as it edged on slowly. I noticed wood was ripping off and my worry filled for the damaged holes under the deck, letting water in for us to sink. As I clung to the knife of the mainmast, I screamed down to the deck. "What are we hitting?" I yelled. One French sailor shouted up, "She is hitting a coral reef! She's bobbing apart!" My eyes widened in fear. Coral reefs are one of the most feared and deadly traps known out in the darkest deeps of the blue. A field of sharp and colourful shards filled with eels and anglerfish and crabs. The red, blue, yellow, pink, and purple reefs of coral were so sharp if you were just to step on it with a boot, it would tear through the leather and cut open your foot to bone. Not only were they deadly to sailors, but they were deadly to the ship's underhull. "Fuck a coral!" I screamed in worry. "Oi! Henry, climb down!" Daniel screamed in worry for me. Even though I was miles up from him, below the deck of the wheelhouse, somehow I could see what his eyes held. Worry for me. Daniel has been my most trusted lad through half my life, and he cared for me not only as a friend, but as a brother. "I can't!" I yelled. I gazed up at the nest to see Jean holding onto the rim of the round nest. The boat screamed in fury. The boat then gave way a little, which must have been a small gap between the coral, and then the boat continued to scrape again. These coral must be miles long. Once it hit the gap, the boat lifted slightly above the water in the front, sending some of the sailors into the air and smacking down on the deck. Jean clung for his life as Timothy rolled into the rim of the ship. Water rushed onto the deck slowly and sprinkled in the hot golden light of the ball of fire in the sky. Since the boat was lifting that dolphin into the air, my dagger snapped off its hilt. My heart dropped as I dropped. My body plummeted like an anvil as if I weighed 1,000 pounds. Luckily, I was right next to the web of ropes that streamed down to the deck wood. I reached both my hands out and gripped the rough yellow rope. My body swung like I was swinging on a vine, and my legs shot out before me. The swing had such speed that I lost my grip and rolled down the web, my vision being a twirl of rope and mushy blurs of the sky. My foot caught on a rope and tied around my ankle, and I stopped hanging upside down, 50 feet above the deck. I could see everyone upside down in the ship as she scraped on the reef. The word screaming was agony to my ears, the sound making my ears bleed, for it sounded like metal scraping upon wood. I swung slightly to the side. I swung slightly side to side, my arms hanging downward, the blood rushing to my head. As the boat bumped on the coral, I peered up past my legs to see Jean was losing his balance. "Hang on, lad!" I yelled. The boat let way, finally from the coral, but this was the problem. We were free from the sharp, colourful pieces of the deep, but the boat launched forward with speed that my rope snapped. I heard Jean-Noel scream as I fell backwards, gazing past my legs, watching the young man topple over the rim of the nest and find my head on the scream. I looked over my shoulder, seeing the deck getting closer and closer. I used the gravity and kicked my legs sideways, and my body slung into the rope safely, catching myself just 10 feet before the deck. But the speed was so intense that I plopped to the deck, landing on my wrist, breaking it and hearing a crack. I yelped in pain, rolling onto my back, gripping my sideways wrist, purple as silk. Jean was not lucky. I heard him scream, far past me, flat on the hardwood deck, and a spray of blood and bone shot out, covering me and a few crewmen in this red blood. His body parts skewed everywhere. His arms, legs tumbled around the deck, and his head was twisted sideways, with his eyes wide open, mouth open. His spine was poking out of his back. I sat on the deck in cold disbelief, with my wrist pounding, staring at what was left from poor Jean Noel. As Daniel darted down from the wheel with Marquis, Timothy was getting up from the rim of the ship to my aid. My wrist was bent outwards, and the bone rising above the skin. Daniel slid to his feet next to me, examining my wrist as Timothy and Marquis and the rest of the crew examined the dead man. "Damn it," Marquis frowned. The blood was scattered in mangled pieces on the wood planks and body parts as well. My wrist throbbed from the pain as Daniel looked at it. "It doesn't look too nasty." "My bone is poking, Dan," I screamed in pain. "Oh, this isn't too bad. Hold still." Daniel smiled, gripping my wrist. "Wait, what?" I asked. Daniel gripped my wrist and placed his left hand on my forearm. He gripped the poking white bone tightly, making me cry, and snapped it back in place. I heard the crack and felt the bone snap back in its socket. I screamed in fury and in pain as I kicked the bloody deck in agony. "Fuck!" I yelled. "There," Daniel smiled, lifting me up. "Thanks," I said, letting the pain go away. I turned my attention to the dead young sailor. We all gathered around him. He was too young. If we hadn't hit that coral reef, we'd still be alive still, I found. There's nothing we could do when we hit the reef like that. We have to be prepared for anything on the blue shits. Come on, let's clean up his bones and toss them over. Get some buckets full of water and soap and wash up Jean Noel's blood," Marquis said. Later that evening, we were in our cabin. I was trying to sleep, but I couldn't. The thought of that young French sailor plummeting to his death was a tragedy, and I felt like it was my fault. If I had maybe tightened the ropes. I shook the thought out of my mind. Poor Jean Noel. He was so young, just about Timothy's age. As my body sank into the soft black sheets and my head rested on the crimson pillows, I listened to Daniel and Tim and Eleanor snore away in their beds. I felt the boat start to jolt forward. I felt the bed lurch forward and squeak loudly, making me sit up. I heard a crack of thunder echo through the sky. Another storm! I shot up out of bed, naked, and sprinted to my clothes. "Daniel, Tim, Eleanor, awake now, storm!" I screamed loudly. The thunder roared loudly in the sky as if Poseidon was screaming at us, letting us know that we need to escape before we sink. Daniel jumped up immediately. "My God, a storm!" he screamed as he ran to his clothes. I slipped on my wool clothes quickly and slapped on my blue cap over my long brown hair. My hair hung on either side of the cap as I strode to the door. Timothy sat up shirtless, reaching for a shirt and slipping it on. Eleanor clung to his side in his bed. As the boat rocked violently in the waves, making me stumble to my knees, catching myself. "God's name!" Daniel huffed as he struggled to put on his undergarments. I regained my stance. "My love, we're going to sink," Eleanor feared. "Do not fear, my darling. We will make sure that doesn't happen," Tim yelled, leaping and throwing on his clothes. After we collected ourselves, Timothy giving his love a kiss, we ran to the door as the Golden Bout crashed through the waters. I swung open the door and Anastasia flooded into the cabin. She fell into my arms. She wept in fear of the loud storm on the sea. "Anastasia," I yelled. "The storm, it roars like a lion does," she cried. "It's all right. Stay in the cabin with Eleanor," I yelled in and let her run behind me to my bed. Tim gave his love a glowing kiss, and we ran out the door, slamming it behind us into the narrow hallway of the ship. The ship smashed sideways starboard, and we all three fell, my hands going outwards, sliding on the wood wall and falling to my side. We stood back up and ran through the hallway, hearing the faint howls of sailors above the deck, getting closer as we went up the steps, coming up onto the top deck. The rain poured down, blowing sideways against my face, and the salt of the sea crashed up over the rim of the ship, creating a thin layer of water up to your ankles. Sailors scrambled around, tightening down the cannons with long ropes and stocking the barrels. I sprinted across the deck and looked behind me to see Marquis, spinning the wheel to the left, east, his trench coat blowing in the salty wind. The rain drenched us, making my clothes weigh down on me. The boat swayed sideways and I tumbled face planting into a thin layer of salt water. My eyes stung in the salt, and I quickly sat up, my face and hair drenched in water. The boat rushed through the waves as I peered up into the dark grey sky with thundering white flashes splitting through the clouds. I stood up while Tim hung to my shoulder as I lifted him up with me and countered our balance. The red sails slapped in the howling strong wind and they puffed out so strongly I was worried the sails would rip off completely from the rope. The ship spun into the waves, churning as the front part of the bow sank entirely under the waves, consuming the dolphin of ivory as it finally went for a swim as if it was alive. It popped back up. Sailors flew into the air, sliding across the rain-soaked deck, losing their caps and flintlock pistols strapped to their belts. Rain cried down from the clouds and it was hitting our skin so intensely it felt like tiny icicles poking into our flesh. Marky howled through the wind. Shit, she's pushing us hard. These fucking gods aren't wanting us to make it through, so they're throwing everything they got at us. Tighten those ropes. Strap yourself to the mainmast, you rumpy-bumpy bureaucrats. Shit! I heard a sailor yell across the Rhine. The ship smashed to the north, creating a riveting swirl of spin. I tumbled, rolling backwards, somersaulting into the rim of the boat. My head banged on the wood and my eyes rode into my head, making my vision blur. I shook it away and scrambled up. Grab those ropes and tie yourselves now! Marquis screamed. Me and Daniel rushed to the cannons tied with rope as Tim hurried to the mainmast. As I ran, the entire ship lifted up in midair, taking me off my feet a few inches off the ground, and smashed down, but I didn't fall. I watched two sailors fly up and tumble overboard and getting taken under the waves to drown. My heart froze in fear of drowning or being eaten by the sharks. Me and Daniel made it to the cannon and reached for the ropes tied and wrapped around the contraption. The salt water ran overboard, soaking our loose slippers. Daniel's thick black beard blew to one side as he slipped out a long dagger. He sliced the rope free and threw it over the cannon to me. I caught it and cut the rest of the rope free. We gathered it up in a coil as I ran to the mainmast towards Tim, who was holding the wood for his life. I watched 5 sailors stumble to their feet and the boat rock up, crash sideways. A swell of water swam over them and the water went back overboard into the ocean and they were gone. I gulped as I peered up to the wheelhouse as I sprinted across the deck, the thunder cracking white in the sky like a bone whip made of spine. Marquis' parroted feathered hat slung off his head and tumbled to the top deck as his long black hair blew behind his head in the wind. He turned the big golden oak wheel to the right, then left as I could feel the boat toss and turn from side to side. I gazed out port side to see black waves, 20 to 40 feet high and rising up. The monstrous dark walls of the waves smashed down into the deck, causing 2 more men to tumble over into the deep, while the rest that held on fell to the deck. Marquis barely was able to hold the wheel, struggling to keep us steady. The French captain cannot hold the wheel any longer. I will make a sprint to the wheel to aid him, Daniel shouted, darting across the deck, dodging crashing waves on the deck and the thunder cracks. A large white lightning bolt slammed into the deck, shaking the whole ship to its bones. Timothy, help me tie us to the mainmast. Quickly now. I yelled as the rain hit into our eyes, and I blew my cap flying away in the wind, making my long brown locks travel behind my head. Tim uncoiled the yellow rope in the seawater rain and tossed it in a long tangled mess to my hands halfway. I caught the other end and swung it around our waist tightly. I then took the 2 ends of the strap and carefully and quickly wrapped it around the big circular wooden mainmast hub. I felt the rope tighten around our bellies and tied a firm sailor's knot to keep it steady. The ship bounced and slammed into the waters with a jolting speed. I watched to my right as a black wave, 30 feet, spilled over the edge, creating a layer of water up to our knees. The water was cold, freezing my skin, making it tickle and prick, and my bones felt as if ice was forming over them. Rain cried down from the heavens, raining down on my face, making it hard to see through the split-cutting air. I peered up at the wheel as the ship pushed to the starboard side, waves crashing onto the deck, taking away a sailor to the deep. Daniel and Marquis struggled to keep the wheel still. The big ship creaked as it crashed deeper and deeper into the fray. The screams of the sailors echoed in my ears along with the loud thundering cracks of lightning striking into the sea, shooting lightning bolts through the waves. The ship bounced and 2 iron cannons came unstrapped. They creaked and groaned as they toppled towards 10 sailors. 1 cannon killed 6 of them in one blow, flattening them to mush and tossing their body parts into the deep. The other cannon rammed into the smaller mast behind me and Tim. I watched in horror as the cannon smashed through the wood mast, hearing the wood scream and sleep. The small mast broke into 2 and the red sail flew into the wind. The small mast went over the edge and was lost in the churning black waves. We lost the small mast! Shit! We lost the small mast! Shit! Timothy screamed in fear. The boat suddenly launched forward and then the left side started to sink into the waves. The water was quickly forming up on the deck. The entire left side was drenched, into the water as the sails howled in the thunder. I peered over at the rowboat that was stuck under the rim of the ship, causing the ship to lean like this. I had to free her. I heard Tim shielding the rain from my eyes. "I'm gonna go cut the rowboat." "No, you'll fly off," Tim screamed. "No, Tim, it's dragging us down," I yelled. I slipped a small knife from my belt and cut myself free and tumbled to the soaked deck as the rain pelted my head. Tim was still tied to the mainmast tightly, and Daniel, the French captain, still held the wheel, making the boat toss and turn to the left. The wheel was stuck and stalling. I watched as sailors ran around the rainy deck as thunder blasted up from the clouds in terror, trying to secure crates full of spices and gold and rum. One sailor reached for a strap-down crate, trying to tighten the rope on the top. It snapped off from the strong wind and slapped him up into the air and over the edge into the water with a scream. He vanished under the black. It was as if the water was swallowing the sailor's hull, dragging them to the seabed. I pulled my flintlock pistol from my belt as I stood up. I pulled out the small white holder and held the black powder, bit into it, spit it out and poured in the grains in the barrel. I stuffed the musket ball in the hole and cocked the pistol and ran. I darted across the deck as waves roared to my left and my right. My boot slid on the deck as if it was soap, making me almost fall into the deep, over the edge when I maintained my stance. I made it to the rowboat, keeping us down. I aimed the pistol and fired at the rope, keeping it down. The pistol let out a bang and smoke flurried out of the barrel. The lead ball smashed into the rope, cutting it free, flying to the sides, but the rowboat, in the strong wind, flew up into the air and blew up from the wind. Pieces of wood flew at me, one smacking me in the side, knocking me down as I felt the golden bow regain our posture and normal balance. The left side went out of the deep, and the water dumped into the ocean. But this jolt of sudden movement caused Daniel and Marquis to fall from the wheel. I watched in fear as the wheel spun around the ground. They fell to the ground, and this sent the ship on its own, which is a sailor's greatest fear. The ship suddenly tossed to the right, causing me and sailors to roll to one side of the ship. A cannon rolled down the side and smashed into the left side, causing a gaping hole. I reached for the rim of the ship, gripping the wood, and stood up, peering over the ridge. "Hell's deep!" I heard a sailor scream. Before my eyes was a monstrous-sized wave, a dark, evil wall of death heading for us. The wave rose to 50 feet as the ship tried to attack and sailor behind it. The wave was too steep, causing the ship to start to lean backwards. Sailors plummeted behind me as I used all my strength to hold into the wind, but I lost mine. I dropped like a feather and smashed through the lower deck door, breaking the door into tinges. I was able to grip the side of the door frame and hang on for dear life as the girl was about to flip upside down. Tim was facing me, still held tight by the rope giving tension to his body weight hanging. Sailors fell to the deck into the deep. I got crushed by the crates. I could feel her about to flip until we crested the wave. My heart dropped as the boat dropped into nothing over the wave. I felt the ship fall as if we were flying for a few seconds like some flying Dutchman, and I felt my body leap. I lost the door frame doing a backflip back onto the deck. Sailors rolled around the deck as she fell straight down to the water below. I felt her underhull crash back into the waves and her front part sink but came back up. The crash was so intense, all of us had flown up from the impact and smashed back down, feeling our bones crack on the deck. Tim's rope gave way, snapped, and as the boat tipped to the right deeply, Tim screamed as he flew from the mainmast, and with one sad, swift motion, he disappeared over the edge into the deep. My entire body froze. "Timothy!" I cried, tears running down my cheeks. I shot up and darted across the deck as lightning struck the deck a few feet away from my body. The boat caused me to stumble, but I shot back up and ran to the edge of the ship. Marquis was able to regain the wheel as he steered her, dodging the waves. Daniel ran down the steps and came to my side. "Tim, you went over! I got to jump!" I yelled, peering out to the black and could see Tim struggling to swim as he floated further and further away from the pushing ship. Daniel gripped my arms in the storm. "You'll drown! You'll both drown, lad!" Marquis rushed to our aid after getting a helmsman to take his place, gripping the gold wheel as the 20-foot waves smashed against the sides of the deck. The rain poured down in the salt and the wind howled in our ears, white flashes striking the dark sky. Tim went overboard. Marquis yelled worried. "Boy, I'm going in now!" I yelled, starting to climb up to the rim, but Marquis grabbed me. "No! Daniel's right, you'll drown. Just leave him to the sharks. I'm sorry, young man." I heard Marquis howl over the wind. Anger boiled inside me for this count. I can't leave Timothy to drown. He was me and Daniel's best friend, my best mate, and I loved him like a brother. Too young to die at sea. He also has Eleanor, his love. I tried to move, but Marquis held me tight. He won't let you, Henry. He's gone. Fuck you! I screamed, punching the captain in the face as he staggered like a shot. As heat filled my blood, I quickly hopped up on the ship's rim. Henry, right! I heard Daniel scream, and I ignored him and leapt over into the ocean as thunder cracked into the water next to me. My body shot down into the cold ocean water. My head sank below the waves. I felt the piercing ice cold water sting my body down. And sort of sting my eyes as I thrashed and kicked upwards as the big swells bounced me above my head. I kicked with legs apart and used my arms to push me aside as if I was pushing the water side to side. I came up with a gasp of air and looked ahead to see giant swells of black waves heading up and down towards me. I gazed behind me to see the Golden Bow, a giant wooden blockade, bobbing like a toy in the ocean, spin towards me to try and get back to me. Henry, over here! I heard Tim call as I peered across the ocean's giants to see Timothy floating a mile or so down like a tiny pearl. I waved to him and started to swim in his direction. As I swam, it was terribly hard to. The current of the ocean kept dragging me downward or pushing me side to side and bobbing me up and down, setting giant gulps of seawater into my belly. The waves crashed into my head and pulled me down with such a strong force, I had a difficult time getting back up to the surface. My strength was draining, my arms felt like twigs, my legs felt like thin ropes. I used both my arms to push me towards Tim and used both my legs to kick towards him. A swell of a colossal size crashed on top of me and sent me spiraling under the foam. The force of the pull shot me down far as I struggled to swim back up. My eyes stung to the salt, my body was tired of swimming, and my lungs began to fill with seawater. The ocean is a dangerous place to be in. A vile, cold, buried, exotic, harsh bowl of water that will send a man to insanity, and only a man with the right set of mind and balls can conquer her. As I sank down to the depths, my vision blurry and my air leaving my body as the current swayed under me in the dark blue, I looked above me to see through the swirly surface of the foam and could see the patter of rain dots on the water above me and the silver-white lightning strikes in the cloud as if Zeus was angry. I wasn't going to let the ocean take me down to Davy Jones's locker. I used all my strength and all I had left and started to kick up. I could hear the muffled thunder cracks faintly above me under the water. I swam to the top of the foam and broke for more air. I heard Tim screaming for help and could see he was 30 yards away. He was close. The Golden Bow was drifting behind me, crashing into the black waves harshly. Another wave took me under, but not as strongly. I was able to maintain my balance and firmness and began to swim back up, my arms getting weak from the constant swish and twirl of the waves. But this is what the ocean does. I continued to swim up to the break, and I peered down below my boots under the water to see a giant dark shape swim under me, dark as a shadow. It swished side to side and was the size of the Golden Bow itself, maybe bigger. I heard it echo an eerie call up to my muffled ears as it screeched for food. I knew it was a blue whale, and they were harmless, but boy were they big. I watched the mammal below me, a blurry big shape, swim, call for other whales, and open its giant mushy mouth to eat the tiny green plankton and disappear into the deep back in the dark. I kicked up and breathed no closer to Tim. I would make it to him within a few minutes as the young man struggled to kick and keep afloat. The waves bounced over my head and drenching my long brown hair, filling my lungs with the salty water, as if it wanted to transform my body from flesh to salt. I could see my friend bobbing close, maybe to about 20 yards from my body. I used all my arms to push through the dark waves as the thunder cracked through the sky. Yet again, another dark seawall smashed my head and sent me down under. I sank below the surface, my eyes blurry to the salty water. As I floated down under the water's surface, I peered ahead along the same level as me. I could see a faint dark grey shape making its way slowly to me. I couldn't quite make it out completely. It was maybe the size of a small dinghy. The body of the creature was wide, slender, long, and dark grey. As it got closer, my heart raced to my chest as it came into my blurry, watery view. I began to make it out. A dark, malevolent creature that lurks in the darkest deep depths of the deep blue. It dwells where the anglerfish, eels, squids, and pufferfish reside, in the darkest trenches of coral. I could see the grey sandpapery skin, the gaping pink maw, the eyes dark as coal, its snout flat and pointy with two tiny nostrils that could smell a man's blood 3 miles away just from a single red drop. Its razor-white fangs, its dorsal fin that cuts the water, letting the man know he's coming for him. I screamed under the water and my lungs filled with water. I was about to suffocate and quickly splash up to the surface, breaking into the air. I took a gasp and peered quickly to see Tim still alive away from me. I took a big gulp of air and sank back under. The thundering rain turned to a muffled turned to a muffle once my ears went under and turned into a metallic hum. I peered through my blurry hazel eyes to see the fish heading my direction. It noticed me floating and began to pick up speed, swishing its flat tail side to side. I slung out a silver dagger as long as a half an arm. The silver blade gleamed under the swirly ocean water under the thunder. I aimed it at the fish, fear filling my heart, but I held fast. The water was dark. I could barely see, but every few seconds or so the thunder would crack, showing light under the surface and giving me a view of the fish coming to eat me. It sped towards me, opening its pink maw with white teeth, ready to tear me in half. Its tail cut to the right, making its body turn to the right, aiming its mouth sideways, ready to snap. I screamed in fear, ready to take him on. I jabbed my long dagger at the beast. It opened its jaws with silence and bit into my left arm, tearing my white sleeve. My white long sleeve moleskin tore and flew open like red papery particles. I screamed in pain, letting water rush into my lungs, but I ignored the fact that I was drowning, and I focused on the shark. As its teeth sank into my skin and the dark water filled with a murky shade of crimson, filling my eyes and mouth in the water, I kicked and screamed. The bastard dug deep into my skin and I felt its fangs rack on my arm bone. My eyes rolled into my head, shooting an unbearable pain up my right arm, through my body. In agony, I stabbed the dagger into the head of the shark. The dagger sank into the grey flesh and I pulled out as blood flowed. The shark didn't let go, but I felt his body jolt, and I looked into those dead, cold eyes, seeing pain. He still clung to my arm. I stabbed him multiple times in the head and then jabbed the dagger, cutting into his black eyes, turning it white. The blood spewed out into the ocean. My vision zoomed in and out as I was drowning, feeling the air leave my body and the pain in my arm. He was not dead yet, so I pulled the knife out of his eye as he thrashed with my arm and his teeth. I brought my right hand around under the shark and stabbed. With one fatal strike, I sliced the knife up under his jaw, cutting through his underjaw, through my own arm and up into his top gums. He then stopped thrashing and laid still, floating aimlessly. I yanked the knife out of my arm and out of the beast, letting the knife sink under into the deep. My arm stung in the salt, and from what I could see were multiple red puncture wounds and a gash lined across it, but I needed to get Tim. As I watched the lifeless fish float silently to the seabed in a debris of blood and my own ripped arm flesh, I ascended into the rain, coughing up water. Ignoring the pain, I kicked and thrashed and made it to Tim. Tim struggled to stay afloat as I wrapped my arms around him. Tim coughed in the ocean as he spoke. Henry, you came back for me. Of course I did. You're my friend, lad. I yelled over the pouring rain. We're done for, Henry. The golden bow is gone. I'm sorry for slipping. Tim yelled in fear. Don't be sorry. It wasn't your fault. The bow was there. I yelled, pointing my bloody left arm at the giant ship sailing in the black waves next to us. The ship was a giant dark shape in the storm, the only light from the lanterns that hung from the masts and sides. Over here, Tim called in the rain. He pulled out his flintlock, and even though the powder was wet, it still fired. A flaring heart popped into the sky, giving them our location. The ship churned to our direction. I could see Daniel on the rim as Marquis guided her through the choppy sea. Thunder roared above us as it struck the clouds. We were two little ants in a giant piece of water. Tim noticed my arm. Your arm! It's fine, I yelled. Kill the shark. I laughed slightly, trying to ignore the stinging salt that clung inside my bloody wound. Holy fuck! Tim yelled in astonishment. You killed it? Killed it, lad, I yelled. Cast the line! I heard Daniel's faint, deep voice float from the rim to my ears. I watched the giant ship rock to our right and through the air, watching a thin rope travel through the lightning edge and splash into the water. The rope plopped a few feet ahead of us, and I wrapped my left arm around Tim's neck. We both used our weight to force our sapped bodies to the coiled rope, floating in the sea like a tangle of seaweed. I gripped the rope and they began to pull us through the water. Once we got to the ship's wooden side, smashed and torn, I had to tie the rope around her waist so they could lift us up. I brought the rope around her stomachs under the foam, feeling her arm was numb now. As I did this, Tim smacked my shoulder. Shit, shit, shit! I panicked. Another shark! Tim screamed. What? I screamed, peering up to see the triangular grey dorsal fin cutting through the surface of the water, heading straight for us. It must have smelled my blood from my left arm. As I stared at the dorsal fin getting closer and closer, I tied the rope faster and faster. Tie it! Tim yelled. I am, shit, fuck! I screamed in fear for both of us. Finally, I tied the knot underwater and banging the side of the ship with my right hand like I was knocking on the door. Fucking pull us up now! Now! I screamed. I hear the rope being pulled over the rim of the ship against the wood, but it wasn't quick enough. The fin was about 10 feet away. In seconds, we would be eaten. Just then, me and Tim thought we were goners. Another meal for the beast. I heard the crewmen scream and heave us out of the water. Our bodies lifted up out of the water, a few feet above the water, and we continued to be lifted. My heart dropped as I watched the shark swim to our recent position. I gazed past my wet boots and watched the shark leap out of the water straight up, about to clap our boots and drag us down to the deep. "Henry, catch!" I heard Daniel hoot over the thunder. I gazed up towards the ship. This happened in a matter of seconds, but everything seemed to move in slow motion. I gazed up as the shark was just 2 feet from snatching our feet from jumping up out of the water. Daniel dropped a loaded musket. Tim flicked the match to a flame and lit the musket fuse just when it landed into my hands. I cocked the musket and aimed the gun down at the shark. Its gaping pink jaw opened wide, showing a row of teeth and its pink uvula swinging side to side. I fired the musket just as he was going to bite us. The bullet traveled down into the gullet of the fish, and the blast of the gun echoing the same sink as the roaring thunder cracks. The shark's blood shot up out of its mouth and it toppled backwards, plummeting into the ocean with a big splash, and it sank beneath the dark shark's tail. I huffed and puffed, gripping the musket still aimed at where the shark was, and Tim met my eyes, shocked. "My God, you saved us! Twice! Henry, you might just meet the best man to have ever lived on the 7 seas," Tim muttered. "Maybe not the best man, but a man trying to survive." I grinned and held the musket as the crew slung us over the rim. We plopped onto the deck and unraveled the yellow wet rope. The storm was now growing calmer, but she still screamed in our ears, and the ship still was tossing and turning, making us lose some cargo. We collected ourselves, and Daniel embraced me and Timothy into a big hug. I peered over Daniel's shoulder, feeling tears hit his eyes, peering to Marquis staring at us. And you can see that us three have a true bond together. We released from the brotherhood as the rain poured down on our heads. "Glad you saved Tim here. I was worried we wouldn't get to you," Daniel howled over the wind. "I was worried too. Henry saved me, killing a shark. 2 of them," Tim yelled. "Your arm," Daniel just noticed. I waved it in pain. "It hurts like a bitch, but I'll be jolly." I looked at Marquis. "I'm sorry for swinging at you." Marquis put up his hand as if to silence me. "You had the right. I was holding you aback from saving your mate. Not offense taken. Now, gents, let's sail this mighty girl out to the storm. Let's not let her sink us down." The Frenchman cackled through the thunder and darted up to the wheel with Daniel. I watched the Frenchman grip the wheel of his French ship and turn to left, churning the gale through the howling wind of the sea storm, saving us from sinking to the depths.
So that was chapter 5. Yeah, that's one of my favorite chapters. It is a little disappointing on little moments because it's kind of hard to hear what I'm saying for a minute in like the middle of it. But because it's still at the time where my voice acting, because we're technically in the audiobook, we're 3 hours and 13 minutes in out of 19 hours. So I just want to let you know that, yes, I know I've reiterated it a bunch of times. Pretty much after like, I would probably actually say probably after the storm, probably after that, starting with chapter 6 is when my voice acting starts to get a lot better and I'm like louder, like speak louder so you can hear me a lot more clearly. I get more confident in my voice acting in the audiobook. So I think that was the last chapter that my voices was kind of lower talking. So I wanted to apologize for that. I know you could hear most of what I was saying. Just in general, I sometimes kind of wish I could have spoken a bit louder in some parts, but I think from now on, the voice acting is louder, it's more confident, it's better, and I put a lot more emotion into it. So just wanted to let you know. So now we're on chapter 6. Get into it, guys. Thank you for joining the stream, by the way. I'm really, really having a good time. So we're on chapter 6, July 1680, en route to Denmark still.
Tim months passed after the dreaded sea storm that rocked the Golden Bow to its timbers. My wound from the ferocious shark attack had my left arm lined with red, deep scars, but that is what mostly makes up a sailor, the stories of the scars and how you got them. It was July, and hot as the sand dunes of Arabia, as Marquis had put it once. The golden sun glared down on our bodies, making our skin turn bright red, sunburning the back of our backs and necks, but we didn't care, for the heat drove us to the work harder on the ship. We had plenty of water to aid us on our journey to Denmark, so I wasn't worried about that. No ships were in sight since June, and food was becoming low, which was worrying the crew, so we feasted on dry meat and porridge, and drank hot wine and water. As I exited the underdeck from drinking some cool water from a wooden barrel to quench my dying thirst and to supply my gums with moistness, Daniel tossed me a long musket and I caught it with my right hand. We were both shirtless, only wearing leather pants, boots, and had our long hair out of our faces. "Fucking hot, lad. Scorching our backs. I'm ready to port to Denmark," he said. "Where's Timothy?"
"I hear you. Port is a nice place to be. Tim is down with his love, playing cards in the cabin," I said.
"What about the captain?" Daniel asked.
"Sure, he's inside his cabin working on a few documents. Remember, he has to forge some documents of payment, for we lost ours when the Deltron went under," I said, raising an eyebrow.
"Ah, yes, I recall. I sure hope we pass through with flying colours, lad," he muttered.
"Don't know much about Denmark. Been there, Dan?" I asked him as we walked along the top deck, passing my crewmen scrubbing the deck, giving the red sails room to catch wind and jogging with cargo full of supplies.
"Oh, I have. Once, a long time ago,"
he said as we walked to a barrel of muskets. "What was it like?"
I asked him, placing the long musket into the barrel. "It's like, He paused, resting his big hand on the rim of the barrel. "It's like a town like any other. When we travel to Ireland with its vibrant green hills and fields, it's sort of like that, only more magical. A lot better food, good wine, beautiful women, and a gorgeous structure of buildings arranged."
My eyes widened at the thought of this magical township. From that description, from the enchanting atmosphere to the food and drink of the comfy layout of Denmark, it made me even more excited to arrive.
There, however, Daniel interrupted me from my thought. "A Dutch king, his name is Van der Verlier. From what I've heard, he has the first letter of marque that we have to acquire after he has to sign it. The bad job is he was the one wanting us for arrest and treason, according to what Colin Backens told us when he found us on the shores of Madagascar." "Well, I'm sure that the Dutch vagrant is living up in his mansion in town," I snickered. "Oh, of course, all eccentric arseholes live in one with a lot of gold."
He smiled a wide-toothed grin. "We'll figure out how to avoid that man once we arrive," I smiled as we left the bank of muskets. We both turned our attention to some loose black cannonballs that had rolled away from the stacked pyramid of black balls. I reached down and picked it up with both my hands, lifting it up the ball weighing at least a ton. Daniel had no trouble whatsoever. He picked it up with one hand, and I waddled a bit as we carried to the stack across the deck, as French sailors darted across the wood, gathering supplies, washing the ship till it shot clean. Marquis was at the wheel, aiming my golden bow to the west. The ship had taken some mighty blows from the sea storm some 2 months ago, but she pulled through with wonderful healing. Her underhull was the most damaged from the coral and the thrashing of the black waves that dark, stormy night, so we patched it up, gluing the wood planks and blocking up the bare holes so water would not travel in the underdeck. We had no small mast, for we lost it in May, but the bigger main mast that really kept the boat going was perfectly intact, and that's all we really needed. During that storm, we had lost 24 good men, and the crew was in about the 170s. Losing that many men in one night is heartbreaking, and it teaches us sailors to stick to your mates in the roughest of situations, and to keep to your head in order to not lose that many sailors again. Other than a few wooden holes that we planked up, the golden bow still shined golden from her sides in the hot sun of this day, and sailed on proud to Denmark. As we made our way to the stacked cannonballs to put away the spare ones, Daniel cocked his head to me as we walked, seagulls fluttering in the air behind his head high above.
"This has to be the shiniest vessel my eyes have laid upon. Plus, I'd sail on here to the day I die. Great exotic eatery and wine and rum in the nights. Spectacular." He laughed over the blowing hot wind and the sun, his fat lips making his black beard jiggle when he smiled. The sun baked on our backs, for we were shirtless and exposing our skin to the sun, but it was so hot the clothes wouldn't do much of the matter. "I agree, Dan. Rum, wine, and ale for life," we cackled, setting the cannonballs down. After we did this, I peered up at the tall mainmast, seeing sailors scramble up the shrouds, the giant red sails cutting in the wind fast. Daniel reached inside a crate and tossed me a leather cask. I popped off the cork and drank the cool water, letting it slip down my throat, refreshing my insides and my gums to cold and moist again. I wiped my mouth, poured the cold water on my head, drenching my sweaty long brown hair in the cool water, feeling it stream down my spine with delight, and handed it to Dan, who drank. We took a seat next to each other, leaning our bare backs against the wall rim of the back. Daniel slurped the cool water and burped as he took it away from his lips.
I never imagined this. Me, you, Timothy going on an adventure of this sort.
I laughed. Not quite. Never dreamed of this sort of ramble when we were back in London, huh?
You miss it, Daniel wondered.
Miss what?
I asked. London, the place we grew up in. You miss it, he asked.
I leaned the back of my head against the rim, thinking about the question. I missed England, yes, but my home life was so tragic that sometimes seeing the golden towering township of the London city hurt my heart. It reminded me of where I came from, and I'm not ashamed to being an Englishman at that fact, but my home. I shrugged off. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's a sort of mixed feeling towards it. As of right now, I'd prefer to be out here with you lads than working in a blacksmith. Daniel had a serious look and wrapped his big arm around my neck.
I understand that what we sailors do is a difficult life to handle. We are sometimes years away from our homeland. It makes us cherish the times when we are actually walking along the cobbled streets there.
You miss it? I asked him curiously, looking into his blue eyes that held such pain and stress. Daniel puckered his lips out sourly.
I miss London just as much as you do, my good man. Not the slaughterhouses or the poverty of Whitechapel, or the constant reminders of my past home memories of my mother being a whore and a father a drunkard. There is, though, something of the city that aspires me to be drawn back there in a way. But I like the hand we've been dealt. Do you agree? I nodded.
I agree. There are some things that I miss, but a lot I don't. I like the hand we've been dealt as well. Do you think Vivian is near Denmark? Perhaps she's waiting for us there after escaping Colin's ship. Daniel laughed in annoyance towards the fishwoman.
That damn mermaid left because she wanted to. She knew fair and well what we were trying to do, and she's gone, Henry. I don't know how we're going to get her back. God knows where she is right now.
I frowned at the remark. You were sadly right. Any idea where she could have fled for?
Unsure. Maybe somewhere along the African coast, but we need to get these marks off our heads first before we pursue the fish. I agree, Master Dan, I smiled at him.
I heard the patter of boots smack the top deck as if someone was sprinting across it. Ship approaching, east off the bow, I heard a French sailor hoot to the captain. I gazed at the wheel to see Marquis pull out his spyglass, open it, and aim it towards the ocean with his right eye. Me and Daniel sat up and peered across the rim into the waters to see a giant vessel with blue sails speeding towards us. The ship smashed into the sunny waves and I couldn't make it out if it was an enemy or a friendly. Tim ascended the below deck, yawning. What's the fuss? Daniel turned to him, smiling through his black beard, thick as wool.
We spot a ship.
Oi, a ship? Timothy shot out as he saw the blue-sailed Frigate battle its way to us.
Aye, I yelled.
Shall we load the cannons, raise the sails, fire the muskets? Another sailor exclaimed to Marquis. Marquis didn't respond, keeping the glass aimed at the ship, getting closer to us as the whole crew froze for his remark. He had a sly grin under the spyglass secular golden butt. Sir, what is your command? Another sailor cried in fear and worry for an enemy getting close to cannon range. Marquis laughed and closed his spyglass, facing all of us high above near the wheel. His black underkin hair blew in the hot wind. His hair blew sideways as the golden bow plowed into the waves. He's that lucky bastard, he laughed. The Spaniard, I knew we would run into that fucker. Marquis had assembled a rope ladder to fall down to the right side of the ship due to our stapled-in ladder being destroyed in a storm 2 months ago. The blue sail Spanish boat turned sideways and I watched it weigh anchor, and the big contraption grabbed the sandy dunes under the deep and creaked to a stop. The sails were stuffed in with rope, and I could see 20 dots of the crew jog across the deck to assemble the ladder for the captain. I could see their dark tan skin, black frizzy hair and mustaches from the rim as they worked in golden and red outfits. Within a few minutes, the latter splashed down the deck and down into a wooden rowboat. I watched as the captain descended into the boat and have 4 crewmen row it towards our side of the ship. The rowboat bobbed and rocked along the calm waves toward our ship as the French crew rested near the rim of the ship, gazing at this new explorer about to arrive.
Oh, music. It's so great. I am very proud of the music I picked in it. It just is nice.
Soon, the boat made it to the edge of the wood, and I gazed down at the man from the deck. I couldn't see his facial features yet, but he wore a blue trench coat that fell to his kneecaps. On top of his head was a blue cap, and on the edge of his trench coat was golden threads embedded into the stitch. His tan pants were tight on his skinny legs, and his black boots clapped onto the ladder as he climbed up to greet us. Marky had a fat grin on his face as he watched the Spaniard make it to the top. The man gripped the rim and leapt over, planting his boots on the planks. I met his emerald eyes. His black hair was long and thin that fell from under his hat, reaching down to the back of his neck and shoulders. He had a light black scruff that was spread all about his face and under his nose. His skin was the tan colour of cinnamon, and he was a built man. His arm size was just a little smaller than Dan's, and from what I could see was a thick abdomen and chest behind that black shirt. The man smiled, his teeth yellow as the sun. Hola, ¿cómo estás, Marquis?
Hi, how are you, Marquis?
Marquis smiled, reaching his hand out, and the Spanish man took it firmly. Bien, ¿cómo estás?
Good, how are you?
Casi nada. Bueno ver que mantuviste mi neve en buena forma desde la última vez que nos vimos. Cuando estaba en el bote de remos, todavía podía ver las rayas doradas en la rana. Tan bonito con simple amiga francesa. La has hecho un buen servicio. ¿Qué te traen estas aguas delisas?
Tired. Well, I see you kept my ship in good ship shape since last we saw each other. When I was in the rowboat, I could see the golden stripes on the bow, as beautiful as ever. My French friend, you've done a good service to her. What brings you into these Danish waters?
I laughed. Busquen alrededor un buen hambre. ¿Por qué estoy tomando un corto desvío para ayudar a esta gente inglesa?
Looking for gold, my good man, although I'm taking a short detour to help these English people.
Marquis said, adjusting to us 3, standing before him. The Spaniard laughed.
¿Por qué? ¿Qué puerto?
Why? What port?
Denmark, Marquis muttered. What are they saying? I asked Dan inquiringly. I don't know, he said. I shot him a look as did Tim. You don't speak Spanish? No, he said. Tim laughed quietly. Of all the languages you know, not fluent in. But Spanish is out of your view. Never been to Spain? God damn, I said. Prefiero hablar inglés, por favor.
I prefer if you speak in English, please.
The Spaniard cracked a smile.
All right, well, who are you traveling aboard my prized vessel?
Don't forget, Hernandez, it's my ship now. What is that new ship you got there? Marquis pointed to the big boat floating in the waters far away.
In the water I built in Argentina. Her name is the Corazon, heart in English terms. So, seeing this being the Marquis' ship, tell me, London folk, why are you sailing with a French crew?
The Spanish man smiled.
Come again? What happened?
The Spaniard asked me, Daniel, and Tim again as the response shocked the man. We had gathered up in Marquis' cabin. Marquis, the Spaniard, me, Daniel, and Tim to discuss matters and the reason for our staying on the French captain's ship drinking wine. As Marquis sat at his big wooden desk, the ship rocking slightly from the anchor at the bottom of the sea, keeping her at a stop, the Spanish man sat in front of me and my friends with a glass of brandy. Sir Hernat, I said, but he cut me off.
Young man, you do not have to address me in such a fashion. We are all friends here, are we not? Drinking wine and brandy and getting to know each other. We are all in good company, mi amigo. Call me Cortez. It's shorter than my birth name my mother had given me.
Cortez said. I nodded. As I was saying, we were captured by Colin Baggins, an Irish captain. Do you know who that is?
See, I do. Hated his guts and wanted to skew him. He was known for stealing other ships' gold and silver.
Cortez said in disgust, sipping on his liquor.
Oh, Daniel growled. Fucker, but he's dead. We killed him. Killed him, what Cortez asked.
Oi, he captured us stranded on an island in Madagascar looking for... I stopped myself, not wanting them to know the gravity of what we were actually searching for. This was mine, Daniel's, and Tim's hunt. We had to honor Samuel for this and avenge his death. As I was saying, we were searching for a treasure trove we heard was off the coast hidden by some Finnish people and wanted to get the prize. Our captain was killed by tribals. We escaped, and unluckily Colin found us in search of the treasure as well. He held us in a hold and tortured us for 7 months until we burned his ship, killed him, and escaped barely. Marquis picked us up a day later. If it wasn't for him, we'd be 20 leagues down with the fishes. Timothy shivered at the thought of death. Cortez sat back, taking a deep sigh of his brandy, and coughed through the intense flavor.
That's it, tell me, amigo. Well, what's the plan of action? I know you niños are from London. Why are you heading to Denmark?
Marquis shifted in his polished redwood desk chair. I am helping them because since they killed a known pirate capitan, it still was murder in the eyes of the court. They lost their letters of marque, so if they are seen, they will be hanged or quartered. They need to acquire 5 letters of marque across Europe and Asia to get the bounty off their heads. I'm taking them to Denmark and dropping them off. Now, how they go about that is their slander. Cortez stared in awe at the Frenchman and then faced back at us with those bright emerald eyes.
Why are you helping them?
Because they're good men, and we're wronged by the law and by a man. Marquis smiled at us, and I gave him a firm nod. Marquis was a good man, and probably the best man I've ever met other than my mates. You can't find that out in the sea often.
So, they are, according to the king, pirates, not merchantmen, he asked.
Yes, but they were wronged by the law, Cortez, Marquis said. The Spaniard turned to me.
What's your name, amigo?
Henry Hartstone, sir. Loyal first mate from the Deltaron and first mate recently to the Golden Bough, I said firmly. Cortez stared at me with intent.
Pleasure to meet you.
He shook my hand firmly. He turned to Daniel.
You seem like a strong and built man. What is your name? Daniel Ogsworth, first mate to what Henry said.
He smiled through his thick black beard.
And you?
He gestured at Tim. Timothy McGowan. Sir, loyal first mate from the Deltaron and first mate recently to the Golden Bough, I said firmly. Cortez stared at me with intent.
Pleasure to meet you.
He shook my hand firmly. He turned to Daniel.
You seem like a strong and built man. What is your name? Daniel Ogsworth, first mate to what Henry said.
He smiled through his thick black beard.
And you?
He gestured at Tim. Timothy McGaw, sir. First mate as well, he said. Cortez studied us in silence, drinking the liquor, which made me very nervous. I wasn't sure this guy was going to turn us in, betray us, and send us to the hangman noose. His green eyes stared into my blue with such intent and sternness, I started to get lightheaded from the nerves. Marquis grunted to get rid of the silence in the room. I need to ask a favor of you, Cortez. The Spanish man faced the Frenchman. He set his brandy down, now empty, and we had finished all of our drinks by now.
And what is this favor you are asking me?
He questioned. Knowing you are a forgery manning the documents, I need you to forge documents for these 3 gins so they can pass into Denmark with flying colors and get where they need to go. I am just a transport, Marquis said.
He wants me to forge pirates' fake documents of identification against the crown and possibly send my life, my crew, my ship in jeopardy, just to save their asses because they're good men? The man asked.
Marquis held his firm stance. A tight tension shot through the room, and I was worried this man would give us up, take us aboard as prisoners, and sell us as slaves to the Dutch. "We," Marquis said. Cortez stared dead into the Frenchie's eyes. After about 30 seconds of intense, nerve-wracking silence, the Spanish man cackled a laugh so loud it startled Marquis and all of us.
Haha, I'm in. Me, amigo. I was just to be serious about all the slander about my ship and life and shit. I don't give a fuck about the law. They can suck my big enchilada. Of course, I'll help you men out. I'm sick of sailing these seas trading with merchant men. I'm ready to disobey the law, and I'm sure my crew would enjoy that change as well. I've always wanted to go on a heart-throbbing, nerve-tingling, hell-bending adventure.
We all stared at him, and then we all laughed. "Welcome aboard," Marquis smiled, shaking his friend's hand with a smile. An hour later, he had agreed to forge the documents once we set port in Denmark, and that he would follow us with the ship to Denmark. As I watched the Spanish captain from the deck head back to his blue-sailed ship in the distance, sailing to Denmark with us and on our side, I had a wide grin across my white face. For once, we were forming some close mates, and good ones at that, and luckily the Spaniard would help us, and this made me the happiest man in the 7 seas.
All right, those are chapters 5 and 6. So, yeah, there we go. So, what was your favorite part? What was it, chapter 4, chapter 5, or chapter 6? Was it either the coral reef section, the sea storm, meeting Cortez, or the talk with Daniel and Henry? I mean, my favorite part out of when we get, probably there's like, I think I typically love all of it. I love the entire audiobook, but there is like certain parts in it, like from each section, that is like my favorite little part. The shark in the storm, yeah, that part was probably my favorite, and the meeting Cortez is probably one of my favorite parts too. So I will warn you, Cortez is in this book, but I don't really give a lot of information about his past and a lot of like character development for him in the story, because I fulfill that later in the 3rd book. But I just want to let you know, just in case there's any future streamers that come on here and have complaints about that. That, you know, Cortez isn't like, why is Cortez not like fleshed out like all the other characters? It's because I'm doing his later. So yeah, gotta keep the suspense, lads. So thank you so much for joining the stream today. I had a blast. I've always continuously had a blast, you know, listening to the audiobook live. It's really, really fun. I'm really enjoying it. I am proud of it. It took me many, many months to complete this long audiobook. And I know I probably in the beginning could have done better with the voice acting, but from now on, pretty much from now on, it's better. Like, it gets louder and more, I would say, emotional. But I am very, very, very proud of it. And it took me so damn long to make this book, and the audiobook especially. And so I think just the entirety of the audiobook really makes it like, it's like my girlfriend said, like it's a movie without the visuals. Like, it's just very immersive. And I'm just glad that I could figure that, I guess. But it's really fun listening to this live. It is. I always kind of want to do a live stream listening to the entire audiobook. But it's cool. It's cool. I really, really enjoy it. The characters, I guess I talked mainly about the characters in a different video on my channel. So I'm not going to go too much into the book and talking about like each chapter and what's going on and stuff like that, because I explain that in other videos on my channel. So if you want to figure that out, you can just go watch those other videos. But Henry, Daniel, and Timothy are obviously the main 3 characters. Obviously, Marquis and Cortez and all of them become main characters later on in the series. And there's more characters that we soon actually, I think, in chapter 7, you guys meet new characters. So I really, really am glad that people who are watching the stream are enjoying the stream and listening to the audiobook live. That's fun. It really is a good time. But I'm really proud of the characters I created, and just they're so complex they just are very unique. Like, if you were to talk about these characters, like, and the new characters that you will meet that end up joining forces with Henry and Daniel and Timothy and all of them on an adventure, you would never, if you talk about these band of characters, you would never think like that they wouldn't work together because they're all just so different. But that's what makes the group work, is because they're all just so unique that they it blends well together as character development, characterization. So I've always done that. Even did that in my old fantasy series, Immortals. Like, the characters are so different from each other, but they work so well together. I love creating characters that have such different personalities and unique traits, but they end up working together with other characters that are completely different from them. It's just, I think it makes for good character story. But I really enjoy. I'm really, really proud of the audiobook, and I'm glad that I'm getting to do it live on a stream. So yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining the stream. Tomorrow I will be doing another live stream. That one will probably be over an hour. That one will probably be close to a 2-hour stream, because that is for chapter 7, and chapter 7 is pretty damn long. It's about, I would say, 2 hours or so of the audiobook. So chapter 7 is a very, very long section, so that is just going to be one single stream entirely. And at the end of the last stream, when we finish the audiobook, I will have like a small talk about like the story and the future of the story and like the character and their backgrounds and stuff. I'm saving all that for the end of the last section of the audiobook stream of the last chapters. So thank you for joining. I will see you guys. I don't really know an exact time I'll be doing chapter 7, probably sometime in the afternoon, or if not, probably at night. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember to subscribe and leave a like to become a jack-o'-lantern. And remember to light those lanterns, lads. Thank you for doing the stream, and I will see you guys tomorrow for chapter 7. Thank you. See you in the next one.